So you brought me a box of goodies today, full of interesting stuff.
I did.
Yeah, so how do you suggest I work with this stuff?
All right. So I brought you quite a few different species. This is walnut, and you've worked with walnut before, so you know that's beautiful wood. And this can be cut up in several different ways. You can cut up for bottle stoppers or pin blanks or turn the whole thing.
I'll be kind of ashamed to cut that after bottle stoppers, since that's a nice big piece. Huh?
Yeah, then you can make a bowl out of it or something like that. And this right here, actually haven't turned one of these yet. This is oak burl. So it's a knob, and somebody sent that to me. So I actually have a couple at home. I'm going to try that out. But yeah, so interesting to see what you do with that. And this is another piece of walnut, and this can be used for a handle on a pizza cutter or ice cream scoop, something like that.
Right.
And this is a piece of apple.
And this is the one I'm most curious about, because I've never worked with apple before, and it seems very interesting.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wood, and we were talking earlier about drying wood. So that's one of the things, is you need to get the heart out. It's critical for something like this piece here we were talking about, and you can see right in the center where the heart is, where it started to split. It's because the moisture can't get out fast enough, so it just breaks it apart. So we have a piece of apple here. You pull the heart out. This was a larger piece. Cut about an inch out of it and sealed it up with paint.
So you cut an inch out of it? Because that hard piece, interesting. And so you don't just cut it in half, you actually, so that was like, the other part of that is smaller.
Right. So that way it gives it a little bit of space to breathe. It's kind of difficult every once in a while, the heart might not be running straight through it, so it's kind of, you have to play around with it, but then you want to seal the ends up with paint or wax.
And that's just latex paint or oil paint? Doesn't matter?
Yeah, it's just house paint. I get it at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever on the bargain table. When people bring it back, you get it for $5 or something, and that's great.
Right.
It's cheap. And I just dip it in there, and that slows down the drying process. And I've had this piece for probably 6 or 7 years, and it's drying.
So was that very wet initially when you first got it?
Yes. Yeah. I cut it right out of the orchard.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So same thing here with this large piece of walnut. I cut the heart out, and it was a much larger log.
Right.
Brought you down some cherry. Same thing. I kind of processed the log and dipped it in wax to slow it down.
So what would you make out of this shape?
Actually, that would probably make a nice bottle stopper. It's a little big, or you can make a small box.
Yeah.
A little lidded box.
That could be cool.
That might be very nice. Yeah, it's kind of an odd little shape, because once you get it on the, square it up and then put it on the lathe, you're probably only getting maybe 1.5 to 2 inches.
Yeah, still interesting.
Yeah. And then I brought down quite a bit of maple burl for different projects, and a piece of the dyed plywood, the Spectre ply.
Yes, and make a pen or something like that out of that one. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And this is so interesting to me because it is so light, so it is so dry.
Right. I've had that probably for about 15 years.
Wow.
So depending on what I'm going to do with it depends on a lot to do with how long I dry it. So for boxes, little lidded boxes where the lid needs to fit on nice and tight, it needs to be completely dry.
Okay. Okay, that actually is a good point. Like, when do you want to use wet wood and when do you want to use dry wood?
Okay. So if you're turning a bowl, a lot of times, or most of the time, they rough turn bowls green. So you'll take the log right off the tree, cut the heart out there, put it on the lathe, turn it. That's where you see, I think you're at the symposium, you're watching the robo hippie guy, and those giant shavings coming off of it, and that's green wood.
Very wet wood, yes.
And it's fun to turn, it's super easy, but what you do is rough turn it. So you turn it down and leave it about 1 inch thick.
Because it will shrink as it dries.
It'll shrink and warp. And there's a calculation for that. I think for a 10-inch bowl, you want to leave it at about 1 inch thick. So, but there's a little calculation that goes.
So very similar to ceramics in the sense that ceramics also dries as it goes in the oven, and the wood, of course, will dry as it dries too. I mean, it will shrink as it dries too.
Yes. Yeah. So you can rough turn boxes. I've seen some people do that. I've never really tried that. I always I kind of have a cycle. So if I find some wood out, I'll get it and start processing it, and I have behind the shop there. I have a whole system where I just keep kind of moving it forward until it's dry. But for bowls and things, I would rough turn them green. It really speeds up the process. So something like this, I've had this for quite a few years. If I would have taken it right out of the orchard, cut the heart out, put it on a lathe and green turned it, it would be ready to go in about a year. Sealing up the ends is what slows everything down.
Right.
It's
so
not,
you have to be patient.
right. Or just green turn it, and then it goes pretty fast. So when I started out, I was, always searching for wood, but I couldn't get any dry wood. So it's kind of
so you got all this wood which you couldn't use.
Right, and then so I had to buy dry wood until I got to that point where I always have something dry coming up.